up in a second. I'm just the circus master. I'm going to hand over to James, who's going to be talking with Kevin, and there will be probably 15-minute breaks whilst we cut, just to let the memory card on the video camera. So that's why we don't want anyone to shout out, because we're recording it. We'd like it to be quiet. One last thing, it's going to get fucking hot in here. Okay, so if you've got a jacket, take it off. That's our experience from yesterday. So hand over to James. Over to you, mate. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, Kevin.
Hi, James.
Yeah, just thinking back to sort of the beginning. Could you describe how you found out about NA and what was the first meeting you attended?
Yes. Just to start off, I'm Kevin. Funny enough, see, James was the one who told me about NA. We were both in Wormwood Scrubs prison back in 1984, and I was in the hospital, and I really wasn't quite very well. And James was over there to see the doctor, and he spotted me and he just had a load of time. He said, "Listen, man, we go to these NA meetings. They're brilliant. You've got to try and get over to this wing to go to the meeting." So that's how I first heard about NA. And he, I believe, it was one of the prison officers in the wing that he was on, came over to see me, Hutch, right, in the hospital, and said, "Did I want to go over to the wing?" And that's how I ended up over there. And the first meeting I went to was probably one of the first HNI meetings in the country, was the one in Wormwood Scrubs. So that was my first meeting.
Yeah, and I think, if I'm right in saying that Johnny, the co-founder, I think Johnny started that meeting as well.
Yes, he did. I believe he also started the Reading one. So there was a meeting out in Reading prison at the same time. About the same time.
And the women's, he was responsible for starting the Cook and Wood Women's Prison meeting as well. So, when did you initially get clean? What age were you at that time?
I was 34, and it was in that meeting in Wormwood Scrubs. I'm just thinking about that meeting, because there was a point in time no one came. People were coming up to take the meeting, but no one could get across because there was a shortage of prison officers. Do you notice I said prison officers there? I didn't use the slang word. And we had our own meeting, and if I remember rightly, because James was there as well in this meeting, right, there was 4 or 5 of us, and the nice thing is that 3 of us are clean today, and I think that is a fantastic statistic. You know?
Yeah, it was good, isn't it?
It was really good.
There was a few other ones who sadly have passed now, but there was Mickey how did it feel to be a newcomer? Can you describe some of those sort of early memorable experiences of NA, either in the annex or beyond that?
See, when I first started going to NA, I mean, I don't know exactly when I got clean, because I didn't expect to stay clean. You know, I tried so many different things and never managed to stay clean. And so I started going to these meetings, and I began to get some hope. And so I didn't think of myself as a newcomer then, because it was like I was just sort of there, and it was like apparently I used to sit at the back of the meeting and drink shout, because I think Dudley was telling me this, or Wayne, or somebody told me this, and I just don't remember. But when I sort of think of myself as being a newcomer, it was when I came out. It was like that was the time when it was like suddenly I was out of this institution, because I've become institutionalised basically. I've been in prison so many times, or in rehabs or mental hospitals. And so when I came out, it was like that was the thing. And I remember the day I got out, I went to a meeting. It was Friday Methodist Church on the King's Road, and I remember the girl, I forget what her name was now, began with a P, did the chair, and she talked about having paid her phone bill, and I thought, junior junkies, these people, you know, no wonder they can stay clean. You know, I've never had a phone, you know, I haven't all this sort of stuff. And one of the guys used to take me, a guy called Chris. Can I use their second names now? No, they're dead. Yeah, all right. Chris Peverdy, who was an Australian guy who was really involved in HNI at the time, and I'd gone round to his place when I got out of prison, great. He said, I live in Ladbroke Grove, Wilmot Scrubs is just down the road from it. He said, come round, right? So I went round to his place and said, I'm going to this meeting at lunchtime, meet me there. And he came up to me after the end of the meeting and said, go and talk to them. I said, I can't talk to these people. And that was like, I was so scared, I didn't know anything about communicating with people. As most people, I think, really, you know, it's all about getting and using and finding ways and means to get more. Sorry? I'll speak up. Okay, sorry. Oh, that's the mic. Sorry. Still learning. I completely lost the track there. Anyway, so I kind of think those days of fear and just so much uncertainty and so insecure and not knowing how to communicate with people or do anything. That was like my early days in LA, and people were great. NA was much smaller then. Everybody seemed to know everybody else. People really were kind to me, you know. And it's like, and I learned right at the beginning that the way to be a part of was to do service, to be honest, you know. And it was that thing of like, at the end of the meeting, they say, anyway, volunteer to put away the chairs, and I put my hand up because if I was putting away the chairs, I didn't have to be standing there like a lemon, and it stopped me running out the door. And I've heard that so many times since, you know. And then it was like someone to do what we used to smoke in meetings, and right, do the ashtrays or wash the cups. And when I was washing the cups, someone would be drying and say, hi, I'm Fred, and I'll say, oh, no, I'm Kevin. And that's how I gradually learned how to talk to people about something, just about me, you know, just to connect with people. So they were very awe-inspiring, and I just want to say one other thing as well. See, James has kind of been so involved in my recovery, he probably never even knew it, right? But it's like when I came out of prison, the first day out, I'd been given his council flat. There was nothing in it. So I had no money, nothing, just a carrier bag and stuff from the prison. And he said he was in a hostel in South London, Sisters Avenue, right? And he said there's no staff there at the weekend. Come and stay the night on the sofa, right? And I did, and I remember waking up in the morning at 7 because that's the time you wake up in prison. And there was a basic text on the table, and I remember picking up the basic texts then were rare. Right, I remember picking up this book and reading it and thinking, fuck, I didn't use yesterday. Sorry, I didn't use yesterday. It's the first time ever in 19 years that I've been out of an institution and not used. Right, if I did it yesterday, I can do it today. And that's exactly what happened. A day at a time, that's all I've done ever since. Sorry, I've gone on a bit.
That's all right.
Next one.
It's a long question. I'll break it up a bit. What were your memories of sponsorship when you first came into NA? Did you have a sponsor? And if so, what was the first suggestion that you followed that might have been helpful?
In prison, I didn't have a sponsor. We had each other, which was great. We all supported each other in there. When I came out, another guy, actually, Stuart was my first sponsor. I've got a thing about sponsorship, right? I kind of think it's important, the anonymity thing. I don't like people saying, when I'm doing a show, oh, you're my sponsor or anything like that. I don't, it puts people on pedestals, I don't like it. But Stuart Rose was my first sponsor, and the reason I chose him was he laughed a lot. And I thought, if he's laughing a lot, it must be working in his life. And he was great. I did my first full step with him. It's like, and I remember there was one part in it where he's just funny little things, just turn your life around. It was in my section imagery, and I told him about some fantasy I had, and he said, it was just a fantasy, I hadn't done it. And he said, yeah, I've never done it, I've thought about that too. And you know what, that set me free. It was like, there was a line in the thing called Desiderata that came into my head that says, no less than the trees and the stars you have a right to be. And that's what came into my head. And that, I believe, was the first setting me more than anything on my path towards self-acceptance. Sponsorship, I've always had, most of the time I've had a sponsor. I've had some great sponsors. I haven't had many, I've had a few. One of my sponsors relapsed actually. He was so good that I thought, he'd started drinking, I thought, maybe he could still be my sponsor. And he was great because he said, I don't think it's a good idea, Kevin. Sponsorship. I'm clean 38 odd years now. You know, and bless him, I don't know if he's in the room. I'm not going to say who my sponsor is now, but it's like, you know, it's not like I ring him every week. It's like whatever. It's we speak from time to time. So I'm not going to tell porky pies about that. It's not on the same level. It's like in those early days, I'd be seeing Stuart regularly. You know, I'd pop around there. We didn't have mobile phones then. I'd pop around there or ring him. Anyway, that's my early thing.
When did you first sponsor another member?
Probably about a year clean. Yeah, can't even remember who it was. Interestingly, people say to me, "How many people do you sponsor?" And I can't remember. People have said to me, "When you sponsored me," and I thought, "Did I?" I am 73 years old now, by the way.
So how has your experience of sponsorship changed over your recovery journey?
Well, I think I already kind of mentioned that. It's like, I mean, it was just like I'd ring Stuart about all sorts of stuff. Just, I think back now, I think it was just nothing. But to me, it was a big deal at the time, and he was lovely because he was funny and he'd laugh, and he was there for me. Now, as I said, I don't ring my sponsor as often as maybe I could. But saw him downstairs and that was nice. People I sponsor, to be honest, it's funny because sometimes you don't hear from people for ages and then suddenly something will happen and it's like you've got, and it's weird because when it happens, sometimes what happens is it happens with a few people at the same time and it can be a bit, but I've always, my thing with people is I've always said, if I can't talk to you right now, I'll call you back later, and I think I have consistently done that. The other thing about sponsorship, I've got a thing I say, if ever I tell you what to do, I don't want to tell anyone what to do. I'm not God, I don't know what anyone should do. What's good for me is maybe not good for you. All I share is my experience, that's all. That's how sponsorship works with me. And my sponsor's like that too. He only shares his experience.
Here is a generalised questionnaire. I'm not going to, it's not relevant to you. The question, there is a question here, is have you relapsed? Did you feel differently about recovery the second round? Because it's not relevant to you, you'd ask. But when you came into NA initially, how many groups meetings were there? Do you remember?
Well, I thought about this, and I had a memory that it was 28, but we just looked at the where to find downstairs. And there's 34. So that was it.
That was the 1st of March 1985, that was that red flag. But, so, back in those days, how many people on average were attending meetings?
Well, it depends which meeting you went to. If you went to Early Risers, it was packed. It was like, 30, 40, 50 people then. If you went to Dagenham, there was 7 or 8 of us. You went to Hoxton, sometimes, there was 4 or 5 of us. It depends where the meeting was. Meetings tended to be in Chelsea at the time, the big ones. And it kind of, they were the big ones.
As they said, the spiritual home of NA.
That's not even going now. But the thing was, back then, everybody kind of knew everybody else. It's like, and we all kind of knew what was going on in our lives, and it was really, and the other thing about doing service back then as well, go off on a tangent here, is like, everybody kind of know if we didn't get involved in this thing and make it work, it wasn't going to carry, it wasn't going to grow, it wasn't going to be what it is today, that's for sure. So there was a real bond, I think, between, and the other thing interestingly, there's so many people in this convention, well, I bumped in today, and some in this room as well, that were around in the 80s. The 80s were a good year for recovery, a good decade for recovery, and doing service.
Did you have a home group? And do you know who started it and when that was?
Well, funny enough, I wondered about this as well, because the concept of a home group didn't really hit with me until about 10 months clean. I just used to go to as many meetings as I could go to, and then I became. There was some guys, a guy called Lawrence and Max, who's still around. Max said they kind of took me under their wing, and there was a meeting out. I lived in Hoxton, which at that time was not like Hoxton is today. It was like dodgy. There was a meeting out in Dagenham. It was the only meeting in the East End of London. So I used to go out there, and they made me the treasurer. And they believed in me, and that was brilliant. So that kind of became my home group, if anything was at that point in time. That was with. I've got this thing that when they have a group conscience or something, I only ever vote one meeting. It's not my home group. I don't believe voting is where. That's.
So when do you think they started that meeting? Do you know
that meeting started in 1985. Yeah.
And how important is the atmosphere of recovery to you?
This was on my list. Depends what you call the atmosphere of recovery, I guess. I actually, it's interesting. I like going to meetings. I'm not going to tell you where I go. I like going to meetings up in the north of England on Zoom, right? Because there's lots of people up there that are new, and actually they inspire me. I've got great friends in recovery who've been clean a long time, and we all support each other and we all talk to each other. But the things that inspire me is actually just lifts my spirits seeing people saying, I'm a day clean, I'm 30 days clean, and being there and watching them grow over that time. And a lot of these people I've never met, and I probably never will. I was hoping maybe I'll bump into one or two of them here. But the atmosphere, I find meetings with lots of new people in look good. For me, I like that atmosphere.
So what is your experience of service and fellowship?
I've ever since I discovered that you could hide putting the chairs away, right? I have done service in NA, and that's how I learned to talk to people. When they made me treasurer, what the job I do today basically is I'm the treasurer of a business, right? That started from that Dagenham meeting. It's kept me in the middle. I've always been a part of it. I think that's one of the reasons why I'm still here. I still do service now. I'm not sure how much I can go into this. I was just saying, like this convention, as it stands now, there was a London convention in King's Road in 1984, which I was in prison for. I think I was in prison then, or maybe I was still using. And then the next London convention, its president's duration was in 1990, the first one. And I think I was the chair of that. And the way we did it was there was a London region then, and we went along, we borrowed 50 quid, and we put on a party at a place called the Piazza in Chelsea. Right? And then 8 weeks later, we gave the 50 quid back to what was London region. And now, that was like the first one. And now I look at this, and I look at what's going on here, and I just think it's amazing just how the fellowship's grown. It's fantastic doing that. I've learnt so much doing service, and I've felt some of my best friends in recovery, and that I've been with in recovery, I've done service with. There's a real connection. It was like one of my work colleagues that died a few years ago. I met him doing helpline duty. We were stuck together in the helpline office in Knots Road in Chelsea, and we just got to know each other, and we went on to work together for 30 odd years. It's been brilliant. I really quite. Is there more questions about service later on?
Yeah, there is.
Okay.
Try to take you through some of these.
Okay, go on.
So, what commitments have you taken?
Sorry, so I'm going ahead of myself here. I've done basically. I like group commitments. Right? I feel guilty though if I'm at a meeting, I'm the tea person. I feel guilty that I'm taking it from a newcomer, right? But I love doing tea. I love doing the literature. The literature is great, I think, because at the end of the meeting, when so you meet all the newcomers, right? And I've got this little trick that because my memory isn't that good. So what I do is I write the name down. So the next week when I see them, I remember what the name is, because when I came around, when people remembered my name, that was such a big deal. It really was. Little things like that. I've done probably done everything. I've never been an RSR or I haven't been an ASR, what we used to call an ASR. I've actually,
what was the ASR camp?
It's called an area service representative, and they represented the area. It's something. I forget regional delegate. I don't know what it is now. Yeah, an RCM now. So I never done. But I've been involved in public information, hospitals, hospital institutions. Just the nice thing. Which commitment? Can I ask the next question?
Yeah, just around that commitment thing, which ones did you like the most and what
Well, I
did you
love
like the
conventions.
least?
Well, I love conventions. And all these early conventions at the London Convention, I just loved it. And my dream was like to have a camper van and just go from convention to convention in my early days. Now that is not my dream. But, it's hard to remember actually some of these things. Like I'm just going to tell you a little story here because back in the 90s there was no Birmingham, second biggest city in the UK. There was no meetings there, and me and a girl called Gaynor used to drive up in my little Nissan Micra to do a meeting up in Birmingham, right? Because I used to put together the where to find, right? And I was always really aware of that there was no meetings up there. So we went up there, and it's that sort of thing about humility. I had this idea of humility, which you don't tell people what you do. So me and her would go, and there was one guy there who was a student from India who was clean, right? And everyone else was at it. Anyway, we used to do this, and then for some reason, I was asked to share at a convention in Manchester, and I shared about doing this. And a few weeks later, we were back at the meeting, and there's all these people. I thought, who are these people? And what had happened was that little thing because I'd said that, some people up in Manchester had got it in their head, and they've got some cars together, and they were driving down to the meeting in Birmingham. And that sort of outreach, I just think I love that. I just love that knock-on effect. Helpline service, I love doing helpline service. I'll go in.
What about the least? What did you like doing the least?
The least? I don't think there's anything I like doing the least. I did, there are some, I've got to admit, I don't love everyone, right? And some people I've done service with, I found it very difficult. So in that respect, I'm a pretty tolerant person, but sometimes enough is enough. And that's all I'll say about that. So I tend to, we haven't done.
It's okay.
I tend to see who's on committees before I get involved in, to be honest, these days. I just haven't got the time to waste. Is there any more about service later?
Yeah, well, I want to talk to you a bit more about service. I know you were involved, you made a lot of, you're involved a lot with fellowship development. Could you tell us a bit about the origins of the UKSO and the European Service Office? Because I think you were the first special worker, weren't you?
I was the first special worker, yeah.
Could you tell us a bit about what that entailed? I mean, what that was?
So basically, I got my first basic text at that European Service Conference in 1985, and they were very rare, and James lent me the money actually to get it. But back then there was a real problem getting literature into the country, etc., etc. I remember we used to stamp educational material to get it through customs and stuff. So there was some people been around longer than me, Mike P, David T, and some others. I can't remember, and decided PF actually.
PF,
yeah. They decided they were going to try and do a deal with the World Service Office that maybe we could print literature here ourselves or whatever. Anyway, they set up this service office, UK Service Office, and it was next door in Euston Road to the helpline. It was just a little thing. It was that size there, and they put out a thing to get someone to go and work there, and I applied, and I got the job, £3 an hour. I was rolling in it, but I loved it. And but the thing. So I was involved in that, and the idea was to get literature more distributed, etc., etc. And further on down the line, do you want me to talk about Europeans?
Yeah, when you say that literature, was that the pamphlets?
The pamphlets and the books, like getting basic text in and stuff like that.
But did you print any of the books here?
No, we didn't. No,
just
we'd asked about doing it, and then there was, in terms of practicality and the cost. I mean, they were charging us cost price for basic texts, right? And there was no way we could print books here and make it viable for the same sort of price. It just wasn't practical, and there was also lots of issues of copyright, etc. We did print a lot of the pamphlets ourselves, And we anglicised. In fact, that was another thing I was involved in. But we had this literature committee that was anglicising all the literature, and we even went all the way through the basic text as well. And did that, but that never ever transpired. It never happened.
But it did transpire with the little white book.
That's right. Yes, we printed a UK version, a little white booklet, which is basically anglicised some of the words like bugger, those sort of things, and then there was UK stories in the back as well. So we made our own version of the little white booklet.
Can you expand a bit on the UK, so European Service?
Yeah, there was no European Service Office then. The only office outside of America was the UK Service Office. So what used to happen, like, was the European Service Conference. So recently I saw something on the Facebook page. It was like this European newsletter. So what had happened was, people would send me stuff in from Europe, and then there was no computers then. It was like you typed it up on a typewriter, cut and paste it, and then photocopied it. So the idea was we did this European newsletter to let people know about what was going on, and we'd send out one photocopy to every country, and then they'd photocopy it and distribute it. And the other thing that used to happen there as well was, like, people would start meetings in Switzerland, Portugal, and to send them out tapes, like cassette tapes that people sharing, and because often it was just one person. It was one person trying to start a fellowship. So is there something?
We're just going to pause.
Okay. There was no European Service Office. The European Service Office came later. So a lot of the stuff that went on in Europe, not distribution of literature, because they get that from, was everything else used to go. A lot of it would go. Anything that needed admin stuff to do it was done through the UK Service Office, and then they started a European Service Office in London. The current one is in Brussels. The original one was in London, just down the road in Chelsea as well. Anyway, then they decided to move to Brussels.
I'm breathing. Hopefully that works. Back to you, James.
I'll just go back to that one a minute.
Is there any way you could speak louder? Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Fascinating.
Can you hear it down the back? Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
Can you hear it?
yes, we can. Can you just speak a bit
A
louder?
bit louder. Will do.
I'm just going to go back to that one a minute because
Just give it a second. Are we right, Paul?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, Kevin. Go on.
I'm just going to go back to that. When I was working at the service office, it was work. I've always said if you get paid for it, it doesn't count. Right. So what I did as service was different. I separated the two. So like distributing and all that sort of stuff, that was work. It wasn't that I was this whatever saint. But all the other stuff, the European service stuff, that was service. Yeah, I loved it.
So how was NA service structured when you came on?
Well, again, I was talking to James earlier, and it's hard. From my recollection, there was a London region, and there was 3 London areas, and for the life of me, I remember we used to go to the Euston area. There was the Euston area, and then there was South London and North London, I think, and then we split it into 4. Not for the most spiritual reasons at the time, because I did it in the office. Well, we had a map of the thing and all the meetings on it, and I did it based on how much contributions, so that no area would have more money than the other. So it never made any sense. And people said, "Why is it corner of this one here?" But it was about sort of everyone having an equal share.
As they say, more will be revealed on that one. I never
Yeah, and then there was Bristol, and then there was meetings elsewhere in the country. I'm not sure if they had a region of Bristol down that way or not. I can't remember. But there was one region in London, and then what happened was that I think we then moved on to forming Chris Pemberdy was promoted. The person behind it was forming the UK Assembly, called the UK Assembly, which is a new thing for anywhere in the world. It was just like a new idea. And that sort of national body, because the only other national body was like the World Service Conference in America.
So, what literature was available and which was especially important to you?
well, I love my basic text, you know, and it's funny, even today, you read it, and it's like, there's things I've never, it's like I have a different perception of things that are in it. It's really, it's, you know, I mean, there's some, that was basically, that was the thing at the time, was if you had a, you know, if you got a basic text, that was like your recovery kit, you know, just, those are early days, it's like that thing, you know, the inventory one, you know, it's like, is it called Living Clean? The one, you know, where you sort of, you ask yourself these questions, am I clean today? Have I sort of tried to UKNA? That sort of thing.
10 step,
that was good. There was no step working guys or anything then. There was one step pamphlet, which was working step 4 in Narcotics Anonymous, and which is what I used for my first step 4. There wasn't a lot of literature, which is why it's so important. And there's been so, I mean, now, just the books like Living Clean, that spiritual principle of the day, that is great. I love it. You know, I do actually read it just for today. When I'm at a meeting, it's a just for today meeting. But that spiritual principle of the day, I read it, and it's really, really good. Living Clean, fantastic book, absolutely fantastic book. But we didn't have the experience back then. But people didn't have the experience back then to be able to write that stuff. But that's the way I perceive it anyway. So yes, there was, yeah.
So, do you remember where you celebrated your first anniversary?
I don't. I don't. I wondered about that. I thought, was it Hoxton, was it Dayton? No, you don't either. Oh, good. Oh, the shame.
Do you have any funny stories or experiences in the fellas that you want to share with us?
That's a question that wasn't on my original list. I'm sure I do, but it eludes me at the moment. Move on.
Alright, quickly. Do you have any memorable quotes you like to share? You know, sort of stuff that sort of had an impact on you in the sort of.
Do I have any memorable
quotes?
Quotes?
Yeah, stuff that people said that sort of impacted on you.
Well, it's funny, we used to have slogans in meetings, and there used to be things like hip, slick and dead.
Yeah.
And just hungry, angry, lonely, tired. You know, it's HALT, hungry, angry, lonely, tired, serious, which actually were really good things which is great to remember. I mean, the thing that I always knew, don't use, first one does the damage, go to meetings, talk to someone. Right, that's the first one does the damage.
Do you remember the Dudley one? Cool, slick and sick.
There was lots of them, but I can't, they elude me at the moment.
So what is your experience of working the steps, and how has this process changed your life?
Well, I think I mentioned earlier about this step 4 with Stuart, the first one I did, and that was like a real turning point. Just realising I'm not alone. It's just like it's kind of, you know. I mean, I'm not a sort of godly type person, but it's like when I sort of think about the process that goes through doing this stuff, and it's like I kind of think what happens is it becomes integrated into your life, into the way you behave, and you sort of stop and think. I went through all the steps long time ago, and interestingly enough, in COVID, I thought, I'm sitting here in this cabin in Cambridge, right, doing online meetings, and a friend of mine we were talking about the step working guide, which I'd never done. I'd never done the step, but some of my sponsees had done it, so I'd gone through it with them, but I'd never done it. And so this guy who's also 30 odd years clean, over 30 years clean, he said, I've never done it. So we went through the step working guide in COVID, and we did it in 3 months, believe it or not. And it was absolutely brilliant, I've got to say. And it's that sort of thing about the more you put in, the more you get out. And I was like spiritually buzzing for a long time afterwards. I've learned just you know, the basic stuff. It's like, I mean, the stuff that I learned in my first year in the recovery is still the stuff that keeps me clean today and keeps me on the straight and narrow. And it isn't rocket science, you know. It's like I'm not into sort of some theological discussions or whatever. It's kind of dead simple, you know. How do I solve my addiction? My life has become unmanageable. Yes, you know, I was homeless, I'm in prison, etc. You know, it's power greater than we can restore me to sanity. I've just been away for 21 days with my daughter. Right, well, 19 days. I hadn't been to a meeting for 21 days. Came back on Wednesday. 38 years clean. Right. My daughter, who's 14, doesn't know anything about me being in recovery. This is one of my daughters. I've got 3 daughters. And so when I was away, I couldn't do online meetings. I come back. I am grumpy. I don't want to go to my home group because they're a bunch of whatever. You know, it's like judgmental. I'm whatever. You know, it's like this. It's like this keeps me sane. This keeps me sane. And the great thing is, I knew what to do. I went to a meeting online, and you know what happened? I started sharing. There was a power cut. So I went to another one. So yeah, it's like I'm powerless over people, places and things. It's like I can't change the world. I can't. All I can do is change me in the way I react to other people, how I behave. And one of the great things, just the conundrum of it is, what I've realised in recovery is the real joy is in giving. It's not in receiving. It's not what you get back or whatever. It's actually in giving. Right? That is absolutely. I can't. Somehow this karmic thing happens. The more you give, it seems like the more you get back. The more you get back of the thing that's really important, which is like connection with other people, you know, just love, you know, whatever that is. Didn't have any of that before. And it's like, there's Pepe, wonderful guy, Pepe, that I used to listen to, and I met actually in America once, one of the early LA members. He used to say, my pockets are full, I have everything I need and more. And that's how I feel about this. And you know, people work steps different ways. You know, my ways work for me. I know that, and I am just so grateful for the life I have today as a consequence of that. Don't know how it works, but it does.
Can you describe your experiences of working the traditions, and how has your application of these influenced your life, both in and out of the fellowship?
See, I thought about this one before as well, and it's like that sort of thing. Commonwealth will come first, personal recovery depends on it. No matter what controversy I've been party to or experienced in NA, my thing has always been, as long as my home group's there, everything will be okay. You know, and that's kind of good enough for me. I've learned. I mean, you know, I'm not one to sort of talk about working the traditions, but it's things like being self-supporting. You know, it's like I was just a taker when I was using it. You know, and if there was anything hanging out that wasn't tied down, I'd nick it. You know, just I mean, it's just when I think back at some of the things I did when I was using it, it's like it's still painful. And I've learned. I mean, the only thing I'm not self-supporting on is recovery, because I know I can't be self-supporting on recovery. But I pay my taxes, got a TV license, it's like, you know, car insurance, I'm self-supporting, I earn a living, you know, and you know what, I never worked, I think I've probably worked 6 months in 19 years in my using. I love working now, I'm 73 years old, I still work, and I don't want to stop, you know. It's like, I like being self-supporting. Yeah, I like being self-supporting. Just there was things like in the group booklet. Presumably still got it. There was a thing about doing meetings and stuff, and it said in there about leaving after the meeting to try and leave the room in a better condition than you found it. Right, and that's kind of like little things like phrases like that. I've tried to incorporate into my life. So anything I'm involved in, I try and leave it better than when I got there. It doesn't always work that way. But, yeah, so I've gone off.
Yeah, you're fine. So what is your experience of prayer and meditation, and how has this changed over the years?
Yeah, well, in my early days, I was so scared of using it that I would, I can't pray on my knees because I smash my legs up. But in my early days, when I was so scared of using it, I'd get down on my knees and say, please God help me stay clean today, and all this sort of stuff, and help so-and-so stay clean, and anyway. And then I realised that I was doing this, and if I didn't do it, I'd be like, oh my God, I didn't do it. And then I realised it was fear-based. It was like, I thought, okay, I'm doing this, and I got into chanting, and then I got into, and I was doing this chanting stuff, and just to say that whatever anyone does is their thing. It's like I'm just telling my thing here, right? And it's like what works for one person, we all develop our own concept of our own. Anyway, I did this chanting thing, and I realised I was doing this Japanese chant that I didn't have a clue what I was saying, but I had to do it every day, and if I didn't do it, something was going to go wrong. And I thought, okay, it's fear-based again. And then I got into Eastern type religions, and I learned how to meditate, which was fantastic, I've got to say. Super chilled. One time people used to refer to me as the Buddha of Old Street. It was just such a nice space. And then I had smashed up on a motorbike, and I couldn't sit to meditate like I was able to before. My thing now is just like my thing is like I believe there's a connection between all of this. That thing about you give and you receive. It's like I believe. If I'm nice to you, I've noticed that if I'm nice to someone, they tend to go on to be nice to someone else. If I'm grumpy to someone, they tend to go on and pass it on to someone else. And it's like I've realised that everything I do is connected, that we're all connected. That's my perception of it. So my thing these days, I don't like, actually it's kind of, people think it's not cool to use the word God. Believe me, when the shit hits the fan, I go, God, I don't know what to do here, just help me. Help me to hand it over. Help me to let go. Right? Or sometimes I go, universe, it's me, Kevin, help! Right? That is prayer of the day. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. Sometimes it's seen as not cool. A lot of my peers don't use the word God. I don't care. I feel connected to you lot, right? And I feel connected to people out there as well. On a good day. Some days I hate them. But it just, you know what, in here, I don't get that. Very, very rarely get that. I very, very rarely get that. That I dislike anyone in it. There's this bond between us, we're all on this common journey together. And as I said, those people are day clean, that keep me clean. I'm grateful for everybody here.